Hey everyone, and welcome to the new and improved Astro Office. Here's where I do all my work related to Moon's astrophotography. Today I want to tell you about my journey through astrophotography, some of the tools and processes I use throughout my astrophotography work, and what you can do with astrophotography to share this wonderful hobby with your community and the world around you. Really, my hope is to show you how easy it is to get started in this hobby. So let's hop outside and I'll show you what an average night of imaging looks like for me and tell you about how I got started in astrophotography. We'll also go over some of the setups and rigs I've used during my time as an astrophotographer. So come on! Hey everyone, we're in the backyard now. I'm going to start getting my telescope set up and let you watch a time lapse of that so you can kind of get an idea of my process and the time it takes to do that, but more compressed. Then we'll kind of go over some tools and tricks I use for my astrophotography, and then we'll hop out and go over the history of my personal astrophotography journey. Alright, so now we're all set up and you got an idea of kind of the setup process from the ground up. Normally, like I said, I would set up my telescope portion first and then attach it to my mount. But to just demonstrate all the pieces that go into everything kind of from the bottom up, I did it one by one. So now I want to talk a bit about some apps that I use as an astrophotographer. Primarily Astrophotography, which is a weather app that tracks all sorts of weather and astronomical data for you to keep your eye on during your astrophotography. Weather is probably the thing you're going to get the most frustrated at, but it is the most important aspect, so you know when to go out and shoot and when you can't go out and shoot, as well as lunar cycles and stuff like that. For instance, with light pollution and lunar cycles, I have an Optolong L-enhanced filter which lets me cut through a lot of that, but for those of you who don't or truly like imaging without any filtration, then you're going to need to stay on top of the light pollution in your area, the lunar cycles, and stuff like that. Some other tools I want to talk about are Photoshop, Deep Sky Stacker, GIMP, and Cyril. Those are the primary tools I've used for pre-processing, processing, and post-processing data. So when those are in use, particularly at first, Deep Sky Stacker and Cyril, those will help you pre-process your data and stack it. As well as with Cyril, there's a lot of calibration and processing tools available. With Deep Sky Stacker, it's primarily just a stacking program, but I really enjoy its feature that rates and cuts out your pictures based on a score from how clear and precise they are. When using Deep Sky Stacker, though, you can run into a lot of issues and errors that you might not find in Cyril, but when using Cyril, you might find a lot more tools and stuff than you're ready to use, and it could be confusing. Now, when it comes to processing in Photoshop or GIMP, it's really your choice of what tools you prefer, maybe even use another program. GIMP is primarily free, and so that's the big bonus to it, but I find Photoshop to be a lot more user-friendly than GIMP, and that's my own perspective. Whichever you choose doesn't matter. You'll get the most out of how you learn it and apply it. And when it comes to post-processing and any finishing up editing, I primarily use Adobe Lightroom and the Apple photo editor that's provided on iPhones and iPads, actually. That really helps me kind of tweak up any final details and get the photo ready for my audiences. Now that I've gone over setup and tools that you can use for astrophotography, let's go ahead and hop into why I started astrophotography and my history behind it. For that, we're going to jump to the front yard. Hey everyone, welcome to the Astro Front Yard. Sorry, Astro Backyard, I couldn't resist the joke. We're outside here today to go over the equipment I've used throughout this year as I started my journey into astrophotography. Really though, this journey started long before I even thought to put a camera to a telescope. From the age that I could walk, someone special in my life had my eyes to the stars. My grandfather was an exceptional man to me. Whenever I would be with him late at night, it usually involved being in the backyard or at the cabin, looking up at the stars through his telescope. This, paired with my childhood curiosity, led me down a path of observational astronomy for years. Any chance I could, I would look up to the sky and ponder the mysterious universe. So, when I was 8 years old, my grandfather bought me my first telescope. That telescope still stands and serves me well to this day. Right here is the 4.5-inch Orion SkyQuest Dobsonian that he purchased me. As you can probably tell, it has aged over the years but used thoroughly. Fast forward to March 2023 and I'd been thinking about new ways to use this telescope. Granted, I had never really known what astrophotography truly was or that anyone could partake in this amazing hobby. Fortunately, I found a smartphone adapter for an eyepiece and threw it on my birthday wish list, not really thinking much of it. Well, my birthday rolls around and I had received a package at the door. It was the phone holder and it was gifted to me by my mother. As soon as I saw my first pictures on the phone screen, I was in love. For the first week or so, they were just lunar photos, but then I remembered something my grandfather showed me all those years ago. The first nebula I ever laid eyes on, M42, the Great Orion Nebula. This would lead to my very first deep space object picture. After those photos, I became addicted. I needed and wanted more. So, I spent hours, days, and weeks scouring the internet for resources on taking pictures of the cosmos above. This is how I stumbled across multiple Facebook groups and YouTube channels like Astro Backyard and Nebula Photos. So, soon enough, I moved on to bigger astrophotography pursuits. Enter my first full astrophotography rig, equipped with an Orion 80mm achromatic refractor. Granted, this is not an apochromatic refractor like many prefer for astrophotography to null out chromatic aberrations, but it has served me exceptionally well in starting this journey. It's mounted on a Skywatcher Star Adventurer and paired with my Nikon D7000, which I'm filming with now, so I can't show you at the moment. I was finally in business though. With that, I wanted to take a minute to talk about affordability. Astrophotography through and through is an expensive hobby. Solid astrophotography rigs can go up into the $10,000 range, but never let that discourage you though. There are plenty of ways to explore and experience this hobby that are accessible and affordable. For instance, this rig was made entirely on a non-existent budget. At the time, I was out of work with health issues and my fiance was going to school full-time. So I did a lot of digging and searching to really put this together. So I have some basic advice for anyone looking to get into this hobby. 1. See what you already have or what friends and family might be willing to gift or lend to you. My Nikon D7000. My Nikon D7000. My Nikon D7000. Fuck. My Nikon D7000, which I should say, my fiance's Nikon D7000, was lovingly lent to me for use in this hobby, so I didn't spend a single cent on it. Even then, the camera was gifted to her by family as well, so you'll never know what might already be in your hands to help you get into this hobby. Don't be scared of used or equipment on sale. This Skywatcher Star Adventurer was a deal I found at my local astronomy store. Shout out to Mile High Astronomy in Colorado. They're awesome folks and are a pleasant experience every time I walk into the store. They found this at an estate sale and I got it nearly half of the price of the new second generation Star Adventurer. It doesn't have Wi-Fi capabilities, but it still served me exceptionally well during my first kind of foot into astrophotography. The third thing, and I think this is pretty important for anybody going into astrophotography, know the worth of your work. I'll dive into this later in the video, but there are ways to make money off your astrophotography work. I'm not saying you'll be set at the start. You got to start somewhere if you want to have this hobby as a source of income. But this piece, honestly, could have carried me for years in the hobby. It's solid, gave me many nights of enjoyment and adventure. That being said, back in August, I was finally in a position to move up in my equipment game. So this rig is definitely a step up from what I was working with. I have a 72mm Apertura apochromatic refractor. Again, like I talked about earlier, apochromatic being the preferred method for astrophotography, but not the only way to do it. With it, it came with a 32mm guide scope, and I mounted it on a Skywatcher Star Adventurer GTI equatorial mount. Finally, I was able to add a guide camera, which is a ZWO camera, as well as the ASI Air Plus. All of this has allowed me to really automate and expand my astrophotography experience, and it's a rig that I can continually add equipment to and get to learn to use better and more effectively. This rig I foresee taking me years to come in the future. I might upgrade the mount as my next step into my astrophotography journey, but for now this is a solid piece. It does push the weight limit of this mount pretty close. I know in astrophotography you generally want to stay about half of the maximum capacity for the payload, but that being said, I was in a position to really upgrade all my equipment, and so I thought for now it would hopefully work, and it does. It works wonderfully. That being said, don't always follow that advice and push the limits of your mounts, but for what it's worth for me, for right now, it works out great. With this rig, I've been able to take some phenomenal pictures and make excellent pieces to not only sell, but to hang in galleries and really open up my expertise as an astrophotographer. So let's head back inside and talk about ways that you can actually make money off of astrophotography. Alright, so now you have a bit of an idea what it takes to be an astrophotographer, but what can you really do with astrophotography? Well, there's really an endless list of applications that astrophotography has. For example, there are artistic as well as scientific applications. Although the scientific applications are abundant and endless, I want to share with you really what I do with my astrophotography. The artistic world of astrophotography is probably the most profound niche of the hobby. Hundreds of astrophotographers approach astrophotography from the artistic lens. With that, and with my astrophotography, I primarily do social media outreach. And with that, and with my astrophotography, I primarily do social media outreach. I make YouTube videos, TikToks, post on Facebook and on Patreon. Also, I can share the wonderful world of this hobby with everyone around me and with you guys. I also sell my astrophotography as prints to my community through my website, social media, and even a couple galleries in the town I live. Yes, you can make money with astrophotography. People all over love the beauty of the cosmos and are willing to buy prints of your work. Just don't expect to be raking in the money immediately. It takes a lot of time, dedication, and outreach to not only get good at astrophotography, but also to get the word out that you are selling pieces. So, I hope you got enough out of this video to see what it's like to be an astrophotographer, what this history in the world of astrophotography looks like, and how to share your astrophotography work with those around you. Thank you so much for sticking around, and I can't wait to see you in my next video, where I'll actually dive into the process and experience of a full imaging session. Clear skies, everyone. Bye-bye.